For this discussion board this week, I chose to do a focus on Abigail Adams, who is, of course, the wife of John Adams, who was our second president of our country, Washington's vice president, and, of course, one of our influential founding fathers. According to the biblical worldview statement that is put out by our history department here with Liberty University, one of the things that they state, one of the tenets, if you will, is that historians must be objective and honest in their investigations. And one of the things that I was quite frankly surprised with was some of the things that I found out about Abigail Adams, Abigail Smith Adams, as I was researching a few sources for tonight's video. One being, of course, in the textbook that we're reading for this class by Middlecoff, The Glorious Cause. He states in one section that Abigail Adams had a wit and warmth to match John Adams, and on the eve of the Revolution she had a maturity of judgment that he would not attain for years, end quote. And another thing that I found was in the a book that I have called The Complete Book of U.S. Presidents. It's a 7th edition by William D. Gregorio and a handful of other authors and editors that have helped contribute over the subsequent editions, and it has a section for each president on their family. And for the one that they have on Abigail Smith Adams, they have that Abigail Adams, as serving as First Lady, is today regarded as an early heroine of the women's liberation movement. And of course today we think of that as feminism, okay? And that was something that I was really surprised with, thinking that when you think of feminism, you think of the 21st century, or you think of the 20th century, the mid to late, especially with the whole Equal Rights Amendment that happened in the later half of the 20th century. But for someone as far back as the Revolution period, it's quite interesting that that would be something that would be noticeable for someone. And I have proof of that with her own words. She wrote to John Adams in correspondence back and forth, and she wrote a letter that's dated for July 3rd, 1776, and perhaps this is what our author is talking about on the eve of the Revolution, is he referring to. And she states, on July 3rd, 1776, had a Declaration of Independence been made 7 months ago, it would have been attended with many great and glorious effects. We might before this hour have formed many alliances with foreign states. She says that how such a declaration would have influenced our affairs in places like Canada, but if I could write with freedom, I could easily convince you that it would explain to you the manner how. So of course she is not afraid at all to talk to her husband in such a way that not necessarily degrades him or belittles him, but she doesn't mind her place, if you will, and keep the home, as it will. Not that she didn't do that, of course, but she was a very outspoken woman for the time in which she lived in, and which proves this point of both by Middlecoff that she had this maturity and wit and warmth to match John Adams himself, but also that this idea of women's liberation, when she states in the letter that have I had the freedom to, not only as a colonist, if I had a freedom to as an American, if I had the freedom as a woman to do this, I could explain it to you. So it's quite interesting to see how as early as the Revolution period in the 1770s, that Abigail Smith Adams was a vocal piece, a vocal spot, if you will, for a voice of the Revolution as she communicated back and forth with her husband, and a vocal spot for women of this day and age, in which all but frankly didn't have the voice for people to hear. And yet John Adams was willing to listen to his wife, willing to listen to her counsel and advice, and took much of it to heart. So that was one thing that I found very interesting, and going with our biblical worldview being honest and objective, that was something that I found very interesting for this period in which we're studying for this class.